Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, everyone online and everyone here. So, I'm a bit pooped. I've been talking a lot, but I must admit, I think longer sessions are good with an individual because it takes a while to get to know someone and to understand them and to have that opportunity to hear and then try to offer guidance or encouragement. I like to do that, but that's why I like small retreats. And I do learn a lot. I really do, about both about myself and how people are approaching the practice, what works, what doesn't work. I ask people, does that work? They say no. And I say, okay, does this work? So feedback, very good for a teacher. Yeah, and I appreciate your company. You're good folk and you're very generous and you're great. So hats off to you. And everyone seems to have been very diligent, and the reports I get about the shrine room here, not that I've got any spies in here, but the reports are good. There's no misbehavior. In fact, the behavior is very diligent. So uh, no matter what your experience of the retreat is, remember, you've done good. You've worked hard. And you've done something which not many people are willing to do. You've given up your distractions. You know, you don't have the company of your loved ones, and although we are our loved ones in that way, but not in the same intimate way. And you've taken the challenge of whatever your mind presented, and you've stayed with it. No one's run. Did anyone run away, Vibun? No, no runaways. This is good, etc., etc. So it's really important to encourage yourself in the practice because a lot of the things we experience are discouraging. Feel restless, or we get fed up, or doesn't seem to work. But if you have a long range view, very simple view actually, that awareness and understanding of your inner world will lead to peace. Just that much. And you spend some time intentionally being aware of your inner world and not taking on the externalities of your responsibilities. Just dedicate to that. That creates a huge power in the mind. A lot of barami, as we say. And that works its own way. It has its own we're all, wisdom is there, um, if we give it a chance to operate, and we give wisdom a chance to operate if we're mindful, just aware of the way things are. So that, as Lompa Cha would say, if your meditation makes you peaceful, then accept it. If your meditation doesn't make you peaceful, then accept it. And I certainly know that my early days of meditation, there was a lot of unpeacefulness, and but looking back now, I thought that was important work, just developing a foundation of endurance and patience and inquiry and too much effort, too long effort. And those things they're not like beautiful experiences, but they are a whole kind of skill base and strength that you're constantly developing that. You for a lifetime, you're constantly developing it. I enjoy inquiry. I like to question. I like to inquire. I like to see angles. I like to read other perspectives. So I was talking about Dzogchen to young people. And Dzogchen is the kind of Zen aspect of both Tibetan Buddhism. I like Chan. I like the Shinshin Ming. So I love spiritual literature, and I like the challenge of not understanding what they're saying. And if I think No, I think this being's got something. What are they talking about? Because they have a whole different language. They have different metaphors and things like that. I find that quite enriching. Um, I don't like doctrinal um, attitudes. This is true, nothing else is true. I've never found that very useful. To me, it smacks of Ditupadana, attachment to views, and that to me, I find abhorrent actually when I see um, some someone in any community say I'm right and the rest are wrong. I just walk away, far away, because I think it's a kind of conceit. But again, as I was saying during this retreat, um, I do think, at least in the Western territories, the non-Buddhist countries, there's an overemphasis on intellectualism, and people can fool themselves by having Buddhist opinions that they know. Well, all they have are Buddhist opinions. So I was reading a blog comment. You know how those blogs work. You get everyone commenting, and it was something about um, consciousness or something like that. And you can see there was one conceited voice which is saying, well, Ajahn Chah didn't know anything, and this guy didn't know anything. And this incredibly kind of conceited voice who probably needs to live alone and can't live with anyone. This is usually what happens. So the conceit of views is quite destructive. It's very destructive and very and it's a false security. It's a very, very false security. So we have a viewpoint. Buddhism has a viewpoint. So all religions are not one, that's for sure, because they're all different. And if someone said to me something which I thought was a wrong view, I would question it, but not from a dogma, a doctrine. But I said, well, how could that possibly work? Explain to me whatever view they might have. Like if someone said jihad will take you to heaven, if you kill the bad guys, then you'll go to heaven. You'll have lots of girlfriends. I said, really? And why do you think that? You really believe that? I mean, I don't meet many jihadists in my life, so it's not a problem. So there certainly is wrong view, and I would certainly agree with that. But that's just intelligence, isn't it? It's not taking a position. So I can disagree with someone, but I don't have to fight with them. I can disagree with them and stay away from them. But taking a position that I am right and you're wrong is self-righteousness, ditupadana, suffering. So how do we disagree with each other, but not create conceit of views we talk. It's very destructive, very, very destructive. So right view, Lopa Cha used to say, Jing damai tuk, tuk damai jing. You've heard that phrase? So if I would say, I'm right about something in a conceited way, yeah, you're right, but you're wrong because of the conceit and the arrogance and such like. So the path is a very humble path. It's not like, hey, man, look at me, I'm enlightened. It's just not what we do. So it's a very humble path, but it's not a path of self-disparagement. Humility is just a kind of lovely sense of body in your own heart, whereas self-disparagement is a form of self-hatred. So the idealized mind is a mind that holds to a view of what I should be. I should be this and I should be that in whatever way in one's family life, in one's spiritual life. And that's the Ditupadana that is really painful, holding to views. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one. And that view that I am anything is not Dhamma. I'm not a thing. I'm not a good person or a bad person. There are qualities of goodness and there are qualities of foolishness. Yeah, they arise and they cease, and one works to abandon the unwholesome and generate the wholesome. But uh, I am not that. So the idealized mind. And I was talking with someone about remorse, hiriotapa. The hiriotapa is a very important set of barami. Actually, I think it's a kind of barami in the mind that we have conscience and that we do regret bad actions. If you didn't have conscience and you didn't regret bad actions, you would be a monster or a sociopath. And there's a few of those floating around the world. But hiriotapa is not. So like I see it as conscience. So I have a conscience. I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to do the maximum amount of good I can in the world. Because that makes me happy. It really does. You can say, well, Viradhammo, you flew on an airplane. You're polluting the planet. Okay, guilty. So there is that. But where I really feel it on a personal level, where I relate to you. Now, so that's that sense of conscience that any decent human being has. And then there's also the sense of regret. You know, if I say something to you inadvertently or deliberately, and I know it was coming from a bad place, and I know it hurts you, I feel terrible. It's just the worst feeling because I don't want to do that. But not perfect. Human being gets the flu, talks too much, wants to be alone. Someone says, Bunte, could I? I say, shut up. Leave me alone. Go away. And why did I do that? So there's a sense of regret. Now, regret is a good thing, but when it comes from idealism of what I should be, then it goes into what we call guilt. I don't know in the Thai language if you do you differentiate remorse and guilt? Must do. Like remorse can be kuson, wholesome, right? And guilt for us is not wholesome. It's a form of self-hatred. I'm not quite sure how you differentiate that, but it's very important in Christian cultures because of the sense that I have original sin. And this is a kind of Catholic idea that I'm born a sinner and that I can only be saved through Jesus. I mean, that's a very shallow interpretation of Christianity, but that's that one of the ideas that create a lot of guilt in people raised in that way. Well, with us, we just have a human being who's doing their best, trying to be a good person, but has vipaka kamma, has anusaya, has all these different things, has nerve endings. So it's not an ideal thing. And so, but because I have conscience and I don't want to hurt anyone, I feel regret. And that's a good thing. If I just did what I wanted and say, well, it's your karma. Don't make it a problem. Just watch your mind. Or I say it's anatta. You know, that would be a wrong view. So having regret is a good thing. How does it go to guilt? Well, it goes to guilt. I'm a bad person, a terrible person. I shouldn't be this way. And that's dosa. That's hatred. So what I've learned around those issues is when I have, I know I've like I think where it has come up for me in the past is when being a senior monk, you hear the complaints, just like being a manager or being a mom or a dad. you know, they did this, but yeah, they did this and they did that. I know they do. Go away. And every now and then I believe someone. And then I don't ask the other person. And then I make the assumption that the other person was wrong. And as soon as I start talking, I realized, oh no, I got caught. I got caught by that other person's perceptions. And I say something hurtful. I haven't done it for a long time. And I know, people have faith in me and they trust me. So then I say something which is hurtful. Oh, do I feel terrible? No, it's really like, yeah, it's the worst thing. And again, it's been a while, I think, since I've really done something too stupid. But how do you work with that? And it's a good example of there are times when we don't see the arising of an unwholesome intention, and then we just act it out for some reason. We're not quick enough to see it. And then we're already in the action, we're in the speech, and done. Deal is done. But there is a result. And the result is usually some regret. Now, in that regret, what I found, if you stay with a feeling of regret and don't go to the thinking, then the feeling of regret is extremely unpleasant because you don't want hurt. So it's extremely unpleasant. And what is more acceptable, or what is easier to endure, is your own self-hatred. It feels good to just beat yourself up. You idiot, Viradhammo, you should bad monk, something like that. But actually, it's much more difficult to stay with the feeling in the heart of having hurt someone. But that is a form of compassion, isn't it? If I've hurt you and I know it and I regret it, that's a form of goodness. It's something to do with the open heart or the Brahma Viharas, whatever. Now, to stay with that, actually, I found it I had to be alone, sit with it and just let it come up, let it come up. Oh, I don't like this. Not go to thought, stay with it. And then that creates a really strong intention to be more mindful around that particular pattern. Very strong intention, because I don't want to go to that again. Whereas self-hatred and self-criticism from idealism doesn't do that. What it does, it creates more dosa, more self-view, and then more heedlessness, and then the habit pops up again, because that's the way it works. But this way, you feel the intensity of the result of your misbehaviors, of your wrong speech, because we're all going to do that. And then in the feeling, then as you get that feeling, you say, I'm going to try to be more mindful of how that arises in my mind. That's different than saying, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to be a good boy. I'll only practice right speech. I'll never get upset. I'll never do this. I'm never going to believe those people again. Blah, blah, blah. You will. Because we're human, right? So that is not a realistic statement. I will never again. That's not, and that creates another ideal. So you create this ideal. Nope, I'm going to be really cool. Really cool. Nothing will happen. And then something happens. And then you feel guilty because now you have double the guilt because you said you'll never do this again. And you did it again. So it gets very confused because that's not how the mind works. It doesn't work through some determination never to do things. It works through triggers pulling out of you anusaya. And then they come up because of causes and conditions. And what you can do is try to be aware of them and not act them out, not believe in them, not repress them, not judge them, but be very patient with them. Then the anusaya and that begin to cease. So quite often, the only time, the time that you wake up is when it's too late. If you see what I mean. Oh God, it's too late. But it's never too late because you can see now, oh, this is the result. Ida Pacheta, with this, there's that. With this kind of uh, uh, inadvertence or carelessness or reactivity, I get this painful result. And that's what you want to see. And not just intellectually, you want to feel it in your heart and in your mind and in your body, how you suffer. And in the feeling of that, you become more mindful, just naturally. Just like if I, like if I step out of the here, there's a step down, and every now and then I forget, well, it's a step down. But having stepped down, oh yeah, careful, there's a step down. The experience teaches me, and I'm careful. Next time, I don't have to program my mind. I've already programmed it when I almost fell. So it's the same way here. You don't have to. It's helpful to program the mind. Be careful when that arises, but it's not a statement and or a demand that you have something that's going to come up anyway. So your intention is very good, but it's realistic. It's very realistic. It's about how the mind works rather than about how you'd like it to work. And then those really, we have really sometimes really deeply entrenched patterns we get caught into. Oh, there it is again. So when you think you failed, that's when you start practice, because that's when you woke up. That's when you noticed it. That's the only time you can start. And you say, okay. And that's where you start to undermine that ahankara mimamkara mindset. I'm terrible. It could be around other things. It could be around image. You think people don't think that you're good looking or competent or whatever it might be. It might be that kind of pattern. And or like let's say rehearsing and replaying. Before the interview, someone told me as soon as they sign up for the interview, they start rehearsing. What am I going to say? 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 I'm going to say this, then I'm going to say that. Where's my list? I'm going to say this. Then you go in and you say it. And then there's a replay. I shouldn't have said it. I should have said something else. And everyone does this. This is human nature. So then you sign up to look at rehearsing. That's where you sign up. You don't sign up for the interview. That's irrelevant. You sign up to look at anxiety, but it's impossible. So one day I decide I'm not going to sign up because I don't want to rehearse and replay. So boss, finished. But you can see how you can play around with something like that. You say, okay, I want to see how that arises, how the future, because the future is in the present moment. We're creating it through thought. I want to see how that comes up because that's a sense of me and all what that means, that I look good or say something wise. And then you have all the projections of the teacher or your dad or God or, whatever you want around those projections. There's a whole package there of self around that. So you kind of, you're always exploring these things. You're just judging them. You won't learn. It's always like an exploration. That angle, yeah. But it's always from wise thinking, interest in Dhamma, ida pachayata. Like causality is so important in Buddhism, isn't it? Rather than self-view. Causality, like let's say I feel regret, that's a causally related scenario. As opposed to taking it personally, I am a terrible person for doing that. As soon as we do that, we lose causality. We don't see cause and effect, and we're not effective in developing and changing ourselves. So now we finish the retreat tomorrow, and as I always joke, if the retreat was terrible for you, you'll be really happy tomorrow. Retreat's over. Let's party. If the retreat was really good for you, say, oh, retreat's over, back to the family, back to work, And that's just that's idapachayata. It's just causally conditioned. And you see that. Oh, okay. But what is not causally conditioned is awareness. That's what we're talking about. So there's nothing you should feel. Maybe everyone is feeling grateful and they're really grateful, and you're just saying, well, there wasn't enough salad, or or something silly like that. That's okay too. You don't feel grateful, you don't feel grateful, but obviously you try to bring up some gratitude, and we all are grateful. But you have to be honest about what you're feeling, rather than put some kind of false front on. If you feel when you feel what you feel, and then as a social being, you're decent. You say things in a graceful way and in an appropriate way. You feel what you feel. That's all right. You feel like if people praise the teacher and you think, I don't know what he was talking about. That's fine because you didn't know what he's talking about. No problem. But it is a problem because they like you. I don't know what's wrong with me, and you create a whole bunch of stuff around that. No, ita pachayata, didn't understand the thing he said, so I don't feel it was a big deal. Fine, end of business. But it's not the end of business because we think a lot. So mindfulness is a very simple thing. It's just seeing cause and effect, cause and effect. Self view is the complexity. Tanha is the complexity. The whole idea of nibbana is a very simple thing. Just awareness of change. And it's very simple in that sense, not complex. We can sure make it complex. That's for sure. So we finish the retreat tomorrow, and I would like to express my gratitude now. I feel tremendously grateful that this has been created, to everyone here, to the staff and to yourselves, that there's so much kindness and goodness and reflection on Dhamma, because that's what's meaningful for me. Authentic reflection on Dhamma. That's truly meaningful. And I get a chance to, as I joke, share my hobby and just kind of reflect. Because if there weren't a listener, I couldn't really, I would, but this gives me a chance to always probe my own understanding. So where do I have doubt? What about consciousness? Those kinds of things. So a good listener creates a good teacher. That's the way it works. And for that, I'm really, really grateful. And so tomorrow you go back to wherever you go back. Um, and I go on the 29th, I start another retreat. So I go to, is it the 29th? I think it's the 29th. I go to, I don't know where I fly to, KL, I guess. And then I start another retreat in Wisdom Park. So same old, same old. Here we go again. And so much of my life is as a monk, this is what I do. Some people do business and I do monk, right? So it's a good deal. But wherever you're going, you really have to let go of all your tranquility. So, whatever gains you had in terms of tranquil mind states, give them up now. Because, something's going to come along and the tranquility will be, there's chaos again. Oh no, no. Chaos feels this way. Fine. Whereas if you hold on to some idea of tranquility and then your mind becomes chaotic and you resist the chaos, you become more chaotic. You become the chaos. Chaos is natural. If you're in a chaotic situation, mind gets chaotic. But the witnessing gives you a chance not to get reborn into a chaotic mind state. So don't panic. Don't, it's okay. It will change. Be the knowing. Now is the knowing. Obviously, keep precepts. That's your boundary that protects you. Hang out with good people. Kalyana Mitta. I mean, that's one of the really lovely things of the angel group and so on. You have so many good Kalyana Mitta. I know so many people who practice Dhamma and they're very alone. They live in social situations where no one No one really appreciates Dhamma. They have to be quiet. It's like that joke I often tell about the lawyer in Manchester. Well, it was long ago. And if he tried to meditate at home, his kids threw tennis balls at him. And it's any pong. Great. So he built himself in his office. He built a cupboard, a meditation cupboard. And he'd go in the cupboard and he'd tell the secretary, if anyone rings, tell them I'm in conference. So he developed meditation in his office. But he was very alone. Like his wife thought he was goofy. His kids, well, that's what dad does, that kind of thing. So it can be lonely. So if you have Kalyanamitta and you have ways of listening to each other's challenges, that is such a treasure. In the text, it's funny. There's sometimes they say, be an island unto yourself. Be self-sufficient. That makes sense. Then it says, the whole of the holy life is Kalyanamitta. And that makes sense. Both are true. Both are true. But when you have good Kalyanamitta, you can't become too conceited. When you're on your own, like I imagine the guy that was rubbishing Lompa Cha probably lives alone. Maybe he's got a cat, I'm not sure. And thinks he's great. And then gets on the internet, rubbishes Ajahn Chah. Safe. Hang out with a few of Ajahn Chah's monks and see how cool you are. What do you really know, right? Press a few buttons, see what happens. So conceit like that is very safe because it has no challenges. It has no real life challenges. You have 10 Kalyanamitta and you can't pull a number on them. They'll say, well, come on, don't be silly. Or, they'll give you feedback, and feedback's really helpful if it's kind. You're like, if you're really you're just making too much of a problem about something, about someone or something. They say, no, it's not that bad. What do you mean it's not that bad? It's terrible. Actually, it's not that bad. This is the feedback of Kalyanamitta. They give you a kind of stability and reasonableness to your life. Because sometimes when you go off in your own views and opinions, you can so believe in them. And they're so right and you're so passionate. And Lompa Cha would always say, my nah. I'm enlightened, my nah. I'm stupid, my nah. It's just yeah. And it's always going to be sobering and grounding. And that's like, as a bhikkhu with my fellow bhikkhus, that's one of the really great things about living with intelligent men who have sincere devotion and who are smart. They're smart. So if I'm going off into some idea of a project or some whatever it might be, they'll just look at me. And if I'm, oh, why are they giving me that look? They're giving me the Viradhammo. Come on, don't go there. Something like that. And that's so kind. That's a really, really kind thing, isn't it? You don't have Kalyanamitta, you can just take trajectories of opinion and mindsets and so on and kind of get lost in it. And that's what the internet does now. People find a niche of delusion and then they find other deluded beings and they live in these really toxic environments and they believe it and they feed each other that. So Kalyanamitta, it has so many advantages and I think that's one of the lovely, lovely things of the group here. Very lovely. Yeah, so if anyone's in the Ottawa area, please hop in and visit and look at our new Dhamma hall. Otherwise, I think, yeah, that's about it. That's all I can think of tonight, so I'll leave it there.